The reactor. How is it coming along? Take a look at it. There have been some absolutely humongous changes to this machine. First off, you can tell the column coming off of it is way taller. Why is that? Well, this machine is now going to be operating under continuous vacuum. So that allows me to be constantly sucking out the vapors, and now I'm not going to be fighting against getting the heat as high as possible before we get oils over. Oils will be coming over pretty much all the time because the vapors will be being sucked out. Another thing, more condensers, a lot more. Look at all the plumbing. There's actually 4 condensers. We have 1, 2, 3, and then 4 right here. 4 condensers, shotgun condensers, all in parallel. Going to be putting ice cold water through there. Eventually going to be getting a recirculating chiller. Okay, so 4 of them. Then we have a sight glass here to see the oils coming out, butterfly valve, and then a collection glass down here so we can see how much oil we're collecting, and then I can close that valve, swap it out for another collection glass in the middle of the machine running without losing any pressures. Another thing, once again, this operates under continuous vacuum, so these are the vacuum lines coming out. One goes to the vacuum pump. When we start, or before we start the machine, we're going to use this vacuum pump. This vacuum pump was given to me in my P.O. box by Jack Moore. Shout out to you, Jack Moore, much love. Came in the perfect time because I've been using this thing and it works amazing. Way better than the good old AC air conditioner compressor over there. Anyways, so we'll use this to pull a semi-deep vacuum on this machine. We're not going to pull a complete deep vacuum at like 29 inches of mercury because after we use this vacuum pump, we have this other line that we're going to switch on, which goes to the recovery pump. Now this recovery pump is going to maintain the vacuum. It's going to be on the whole time the machine is running. This recovery pump cannot maintain a deep vacuum. Maybe I need to get a more powerful one to do that eventually, but right now it can maintain a semi-deep vacuum around 17 to 20 inches of mercury, but that's more than enough of a vacuum to give us favorable conditions for oil production. And so this is going to be sucking out the vapors. You see it has an oil and water filter to make sure our vapors don't have any moisture in it. Another thing to mention, this is an activated carbon filter here, so this whole column is full of activated carbon to get rid of some potential nasties if there are any. And anyway, this goes to this regulator with another water and oil filter here, and then this is going to be able to go right to a propane tank because this recovery pump can put out high pressures. So it can put out enough pressure to go right into a propane tank right from the reactor. And we got to run it anyway to keep the machine under constant vacuum. So since we got to run the pump anyway, we might as well compress it right to the propane tanks, our natural gas collection propane tanks, you know, while we're doing it. Another update, I have got the other 2 wireless relays, so now every single magnetron and transformer is completely wireless. With my key fob system, I can turn it on without having to touch any wires, be nearby at all now. So that's great. I've also adjusted this. The feed system, you see it used to be double valve, it's just single valve for now because, like I said, we were having issues with the previous design, the feed design. The plastic would get trapped in the middle when I load a ton in, so we're going to have to ultimately convert this to an auger feed design, and that's going to come a little bit later because I'm going to have to get some expensive tri-clamp pipes for that. But when we do get to that point, we'll replace this with that design. But in the meantime, I'm just having a single valve feed design here. So it's looking good. Last thing, thermometers. We have 3 thermometers on this. This thermometer here it's actually inside the elbow. The thermometer probe is literally inside the elbow up there, so that'll let us know the temperature of the vapors internally. This thermometer here is on this condenser, the body of this condenser. So that's going to let us know, okay, is our water starting to heat up? Do we need to add more ice to it, right? How is the temperature of the condenser looking? We want it to always be low. This temperature here, the third one, is the temperature of the body, the underside of the middle of the body of the machine. So that's going to let us know, okay, if the outside, for example, is 500 C, then we know the inside is definitely over 1000 C at the points of plastic. So that just lets us know a rough estimate of the potential temperatures there. So it's looking great. Recovery pump, I've been trying it out a few times, works amazing. I gotta thank you guys for giving me the suggestions to get this, because trust me, I've been using this HVAC compressor for years now, and I mean, like, it does the job, but they obviously burn out because they're meant to run with oil. And I've been trying to find the perfect replacement, and this is literally the perfect replacement. So I appreciate you guys for all the advice. So obviously you can just look at the thing and tell there are an absolute ton of new variables. So before I can do any type of calculated run, any type of methodical run, I have to do a test run, low power test run for safety concerns to make sure everything's in place. Now, for those of you that may ask the same question that I asked myself when I thought about running this thing under vacuum, you may think, well, what happens, Naturejab, when or if, most likely when though, a gasket pops when this thing is under vacuum, when it is also operating? Well, what's going to happen in theory, right, would be it's under vacuum, so it's going to suck in the oxygen from the air. It's going to mix with the flammable vapors, and then it will cause an explosion, and that's just period. Because there'll be too many flammable vapors in this chamber, and it's going to be too much negative pressure for it not to suck in enough air to cause that proper mixture. However, there are two things that are in my favor that I can do to actually alleviate that risk. One is first of all, with it being under vacuum, the flammable fumes will always be constantly being sucked out the machine. So it will not be a case of an instant explosion, because there needs to be enough flammable fumes in there to begin with to cause an explosion. The other thing that is in my favor is this right here. This is my secret backup safety right here. This is a bottle of nitrogen that's plumbed directly to the machine at all times, and if a gasket were to pop, the procedure follows as this. I quickly turn off the machine so there's no source of ignition as fast as possible. Okay, and after I turn off the machine, I come over here and then I just open this, I just turn this literally just once and listen. It's already completely open, this regulator. So that way what's going to happen is I just turn that once, then nitrogen at high pressure is going to flow into this reactor. And hopefully that nitrogen flow will displace enough of the vacuum so where there's not a ton of oxygen being sucked in. Because for those of you that don't know, nitrogen is an inert gas. It's not going to mix with the flammable fumes and make a flammable, explosive environment. It's literally just going to displace other gases. So that's the idea. Of course, the biggest downfall to this is that I have to be out here when a gasket fails to open this valve and even to turn the machine off. So hopefully in the future, this can be some type of automated thing based on computers that sense maybe if the vacuum drops too much, then this nitrogen is on an Arduino and it just naturally opens. And then of course there can definitely be sensors to make the whole machine turn off at a certain pressure drop or a certain temperature rise or pressure rise. So that's the idea. That's how we're going to stay safe. Let's load some of my lab waste in here, because I'm not going to use my shredded plastic. I'm saving that for when we do a calculated run by the pound. But I have a ton of lab waste every day I make, and I actually love these machines for this reason, because all of my lab waste in constructing this machine can go right inside this machine. So let's do it. So right now I'm putting in towels that I use to clean up oil spills, as well as some carbon that absorbed a bunch of oil. Since I have a small quantity of waste in there, I'm going to spin the blades for a little bit, so that way instead of all the waste just being in the beginning, we can actually have some waste in the middle, some in the beginning, maybe just a little bit at the end. Sometimes the blades catch like that. Over time that gets less and less, because whatever that part that catches is, it scrapes off, you know, the inconsistencies in my circumferences when I cut them out by hand. Anyways, we could turn on this vacuum pump here, and get this thing under vacuum while this is happening, because it takes a little bit of time to get this thing under vacuum. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on. And I have a manometer here that is hooked to this side of the reactor. You can actually see where it's going in right there. So this is going to let us know how many inches of mercury we're pulling. So you can see just already we're at 2 inches of mercury. So there you go. Let's ice up this cooler while we're waiting. For the reactor right here, I turned the pump on early to go ahead and drop the temperature of these condensers. Since we're going to be pulling a vacuum, there's really not going to be much time for these condensers to get cold once the machine is on, before these vapors start really flooding over. And you can see on this temperature gauge, the one hooked to the actual condenser, temperature is already dropping. This is the normal temperature of these pipes right now, around 31 C, or up here, let's have this in Fahrenheit, we're at about 87 Fahrenheit. Alright, so we've just hit 20.660 inches of mercury, and I know this is not a full vacuum. Full vacuum is like 29, a little over 29, but according to scientific literature, some research papers I've read on vacuum pyrolysis, being at this much is well over the necessary vacuum to get the benefits of both the temperature reduction as well as the yields of oil. We'll turn on 2 magnetrons to start, and then we are going to open up this port here after a little bit, just a little bit. We're going to wait just a second to see how everything goes. Open up this port to the recovery pump, turn the recovery pump on, and then we're going to see what ends up coming out on the output end of the recovery pump. You see I have a yoga ball here ready to capture the gases that come out, because I'm just going to test that low pressure form of storage first before we test the propane tanks. Alright, 2 magnetrons on. I'll be paying attention to the manometer. Once the vacuum starts breaking to a relatively quick pace, then we'll turn on the recovery pump. Alright, take a look at the manometer. Vacuum has gone to 20 to 18, and you see it's constantly going down. So now we're going to turn the recovery pump to hopefully hold it around this pressure. Alright, recovery pump is on. I love how the recovery pumps are variable at the rate at which it can recover or vacuum in, because I have it just in the Goldilocks zone where it's maintaining the 18 inch of mercury vacuum here. Alright, we're going to turn on a 3rd magnetron right now. Recovery pump is hooked up to the yoga ball. You can see that it is filling with vapors. Alright, we got 4 magnetrons on. The only thing I've noticed is that the temperature of the internal elbow, so this elbow coming off here, right, there's a probe on the inside of it, and the temperature has risen from 87 Fahrenheit to it's now 89 Fahrenheit, which means the vapors are getting hotter. So that means that we should be getting some oils coming over. I don't know what temperature we'll see, but yeah. When we see oils, the first place we'll see them will be down at this sight glass down here, of course. So these sight glasses are getting foggy, and you can see vapors in them moving around, which is actually kind of interesting to me, because I wouldn't think that would happen since the vapors are being sucked up this way. But either way, obviously those are pyrolysis vapors forming, so that's a good sign. It's just interesting. I didn't think we'd see vapors here at all, since this oil sight glass is under this T, and this T is where they're being sucked out of. After another 5 minutes, we're at 95 Fahrenheit, so it is getting hot. What is that in centigrade for my global folks? 35 C. So we are starting to raise up the temperature on the inside of the reactor. So that is the temperature of the vapors on the elbow. The temperature of the body of the machine is 50 C right now, or was that over 100 Fahrenheit. Another thing to note, I have the recovery pump on the lowest setting. The vacuum is being broken more and more. So I'm about to turn it up actually. Just a little bit. So that way we can keep the vacuum at about 18 consistently. So let's see if it's starting to build up from that. No, it's not. It's still going down. So we got to get it even quicker. This is just with 4 magnetrons on as well. Another thing to note, the sight glasses, both of them, have become very foggy, but especially this one up here at the top. So maybe that means I need to turn up the pump some more. Another more concerning note, my oil filter on the input to the recovery pump, see, has some drops of oil on every side. And that's concerning because it's like, well, I have all these condensers. Why is the oil not condensing yet, but coming out here? Obviously, the oil filter is doing its job, so that's good to see. But I don't like that there's oil coming out right here at all. Yoga ball is also filling up. All right, all 6 magnetrons are on. The recovery pump is at full speed, and yet the vacuum is still breaking. So clearly, it's going to reach a point, it's going to bottom out at some point, where it's going to be at that equilibrium. But clearly, to maintain a stronger vacuum, in the 20s, I'm going to need a stronger pump. I'll get that eventually. I also hooked up this vacuum gauge here. We have a leak. We have a leak. Oh, it's not a leak, it's a transformer on fire. So I'm not exactly sure. Oh, actually, let's take a look. So this is what was happening. This transformer got too hot and it is burning out. I'm actually glad it wasn't a leak, but there were a ton of fumes that came off that thing. Now I pumped in this nitrogen and a ton of fumes were coming out, but I'm not sure if that was because of the nitrogen being pumped in. Let's see. I'm going to pump some in right now. The vacuum on the machine is still actually held at 10, so there was no leak on the machine, thank God. But, sorry I had to cut the camera off quickly there, guys. You know, you have to remember, if there is a leak in this machine, right, and I just let it build up, the machine will blow up. It's just that simple, and it will not just be like the past depressurizations where flammable vapors leave. It's going to be a straight explosion. Okay, so these transformers are absolute shite, and they do this mess. But let me tell you the good news, though. The bright side of things is, guess what, guys? I just got my 220 power supplies from China, 12 of them. We're only going to be using 9, though, on the machine total. This is so light compared to those transformers, so this can power the machine. It's 220, though. The issue is I have to order a 220 cord long enough to get to my wall outlet over here, my 220 wall outlet. That's over in this area. But we got the power supply, so as soon as I get that 220 cord long enough, we'll be able to solve almost all these transformer issues. It comes built in with a fan, so it's going to cool itself off. It won't do that mess. And they are way more efficient too. While these transformers here end up wasting about almost half their energy as heat, those are switch mode power supplies, so they're about 80 to 90% efficient. So that's going to be amazing. Can't wait to get those going. Thank God it was not a failure on my end of any of my parts or gaskets, so we can actually get the machine started again. Now, according to this gauge, the vacuum's broken. Oh, my bad. Gotta open it up again. Vacuum's still at 10, so we're good. I just had another transformer fail, one of them in the beginning, because I tried to, instead of using the second transformer, because that was the one that almost caught on fire, I tried to use a third transformer, and then that one had a short that almost blew out my relay completely. So it's just like, great. Stuff just keeps happening. Yoga ball is pretty much full at this point. I don't know what type of vapors are in this thing because I had to pump in some nitrogen out of fear. So if that isn't a sign it's time to move to these better 220 power supplies, switch mode power supplies, I don't know what is. 2 transformers dying in the same run and almost destroying a lot of stuff. About 5 minutes with 6 magnetrons on, 3 in the middle, 1 at the end, 2 at this end. Temperature is at 104 Fahrenheit. Sight glasses are extra foggy. Recovery pump at full recovery mode is not maintaining the vacuum well, but it did drop to 10 because I pushed a ton of nitrogen in there, so it may not have been this low naturally. I'm going to have to spin the blades because since we only have 1 magnetron in the beginning, we're kind of limiting the amount of vapor. Nonetheless, the temperature's going up. Now, mind you, in the past, we did not start to see oils come out until we hit about 100 C vapor temperature before. Let's see what we're at Celsius, 41 C. So we're going to see what temperature they come over this time. but right now at 100°C, no oils are coming over despite a lot of vapors. 140 Fahrenheit, I just saw the first drop of oil, look. Now that might be water. It could be water, but nonetheless, it's a liquid coming over. 140 Fahrenheit. I do want to take note of how significantly lower the temperature is when we start to see liquids coming over now under vacuum versus before. Before, we were pretty much at double this temperature. We didn't start to see liquids until 120°C, or that would end up being almost, well, that's pretty much 300 degrees Fahrenheit vapor temperature. So that's an amazing boost right there. And look, it's starting to come out more and more. Now, like I said, this does look like water, but the point is, liquid's coming out, starting to condense nonetheless. So the recovery pump at max seems to pretty much bottom out at an 8-inch of mercury vacuum here. So it's been staying pretty consistent right there for a while. Take a look, we're at 170 Fahrenheit, and we do definitely have liquids down there. Let me just shake this a little bit. You see that? Definitely got liquids. It looks like it's really just water. Let's spin these blades, okay? Look, I turned this gauge towards me, so that way we can spin the blades and make sure. You see right now about 8 Hg of mercury, 8 inches of mercury. Spin these blades. You guys know when you spin the blades, gas pockets get released. That's in between the whatever's in the machine, the waste products, as well as it increases the surface area of the microwave, so it usually leads to pressure spikes. So we might see a little dip on the vacuum gauge, but it should not be anything major unless this shaft starts leaking. So let's go ahead and turn these blades on. A little bump there. So you see the shaft is spinning. The shaft is definitely spinning, catching. And then look, vacuum gauge is still fine. We're still at over 8 inches of mercury, so we're good on that. 172 Fahrenheit, 78°C. Those are straight oils now, that's not water. And that's a consistent stream, baby. That's what we like to see. What are we, about 30, 35 minutes in? That's excellent. We love to see that. We love to see that. As you can see, we are getting glorious oil yields. The cool thing about this sight glass too is you can see the separation between the oil and water. You can see how much oil and how much water. Right now, it's over 50-50, so it's probably like 70 to 40. The water is just at the bottom, the oils are naturally at the top. But we're at 176 Fahrenheit vapor temperature, and it's been sitting there, 176.4. It's been sitting there for the past 10-20 minutes, so I think that this is actually the max. Because think about it, the vapors are going to be being pulled through at a consistent rate thanks to this thing. So they can only really get so hot and have so much contact with the pipe. So it's going to at some point just hit a temperature where it stops. But mind you, for us to get oil yields like this before, we had to be at pretty much 200°C before. Now we're literally just at 80°C. So amazing temperature difference, and obviously it's no shortage of oils. Now we're maintaining a consistent 10 Hg, 10 inches of mercury on the vacuum side here. I've spun the blades a few more times as well. Now mind you, we barely put much in today. We need to put in a large quantity of plastic. You know, most of what I put in was actually just a lot of towels with oil in them and carbon. But once we put in a large quantity of plastic, it's going to make more vapors, which will bring the vacuum lower, but also will increase the oil yield. Once this bladder fills up, I'm actually going to have to start compressing it into a propane tank. Alright, so the natural gas bladder is filled up. Right now I have the output of the recovery machine going right to the propane tank. So we're going to see if that will start to compress it. Alright, so after about 5 minutes, the propane tank is sitting at 20 psi. So the recovery pump is doing an amazing job at pushing out this natural gas, getting it directly in this tank. Because this bladder obviously is about to bust. Look at that. Now there's no water in that. That's just oil right there. Oil video made from plastic live. You've seen it here. Alright, so we're at 65 PSI on the propane tank. It's looking great. Recovery pump is doing amazing. Not even a sound of struggling from it. Look at these oils coming out. Amazing. So it is running great. The condenser is starting to heat up. It's at 14C. The vapor temperature inside is still around the same, 174, so that seems to be the peak. And the body belly temperature is at 211C. Alright, so after about 3 hours of running, the temperatures of the internal pipe on the elbow are starting to go down. It's normally 174, now it's 163. Oils are barely coming out. Now mind you, we got way more oils over here. I just poured some out to see how much water. The vacuum is starting to build slowly. So we're going to go ahead and turn it off and see what happens. I've spun the blades for quite some time. And we're going to see now. We're going to leave the recovery pump on for a little bit. Let's see. We're at 140 PSI in the propane tank, so that's amazing. Alright, so we came out to 150 PSI of natural gas in this propane tank as well as this big bladder. Let's see how it burns. Yeah, I love that flame right there. It's just blue. It's literally just blue with some orange hints to it, but it's a beautiful, beautiful flame. It smells great too. Like, it doesn't smell like plastic. Doesn't smell offensive. It smells like a gas station.